Hey everybody, I'm Kevin Kemp and this is Kemp Outside. We're your inside source for all things outside. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about cast iron. And I'll be honest, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with cast iron. I know a lot of people love it and use it at their campsites. I do use some cast iron, but I also use other pots and pans. I do use some Teflon coated nonstick pans at the campsite as well as my cast iron. But today we're going to show you how to season a pan. We're going to show you how to restore a pan that is a little rusty. And then I'm going to show you how I maintain my reversible griddle grills that I use on my propane stoves because it's a little, they're unique in that the side you cook on is often reversed and is now being exposed to open flame from a burner. And so there are some special maintenance that you need to do to make sure both sides of your griddle grill is ready to go. The cons to using cast iron is that it's very heavy. So if you're camping and you don't have the ability to like park right next to your site and you've got to carry stuff in, carrying cast iron is not something that I would want to do, at least for very far. But if you're car camping, cast iron can be great. The other thing is I live in Florida, and so I cannot store my cast iron outside when I'm not using it, or like in my garage or in my barn, because it will rust. The humidity here, it doesn't seem to matter what I do or how well I season it. If I let it sit too long, I get some rust spots. So I have to store my cast iron in the house. That's okay, but it's just not the ideal situation for me. And then obviously you want to make sure that you take care of that polymerized oil coating that seasons your cast iron so that it stays non-stick. So sometimes it's just a little bit easier for me to just spray some PAM in a Teflon coated pan and cook something up at the campsite. And so, like I said, I use both. But today I want to focus on cast iron because it definitely has a strong following in the camping community. And like I said, I do use it. So with that, we'll get started. And if you like what you see, if this has been helpful to you, please hit that subscribe button and tell your friends about us. The whole goal of Kemp Outside is to help beginners learn how to go camping and fishing and hiking, and to take their kids and to just learn to enjoy nature. So hit that subscribe button, and if there's anything that you'd like us to cover, any questions that you may have, or tips and tricks, one of these days I'll be able to say that right. If you have any tips or tricks on how you maintain your cast iron, drop those out down in the comments below for the fellow outsiders. This has been Kevin, and we'll see you outside. So here we have our Camp Chef griddle grill. It's two sides, and so we're going to go ahead and oil both sides to prep it for baking it in the oven to get seasoning. So what I do is I take a little oil and I just pour a little oil on it, and then I'm going to spread that oil with a paper towel. And you want to cover the entire surface with a nice thin coat of oil. Work it into the metal. You don't want it to be thick. Make sure you get it on the sides, and on the grill side you want to get it in the groove. I even go ahead and do the handles, because as I've said before, in Florida there's a lot of humidity, and so when your griddle sits, especially if it hasn't been seasoned in a while or it's exposed to any kind of moisture, you can develop some rust pockets. So definitely take your time doing this. If you need to add a little more oil, that's okay, but you only want a very small amount of oil to cover the surface. It shouldn't drip when you pick it up. And as you can see, I take my time and I go over every spot multiple times. Okay, and then I'm going to flip it over. Notice I put a little cutting board underneath it so it's not sitting directly on the counter. That's a little trick that I use. Then we'll go ahead and do the other side. Now with these reversible griddle grills, the side that you're not using is the side that faces the heat from the burner of whatever camp stove you're using. So you need to do this regularly because you'll burn the seasoning off the side that's exposed to the flames if you use it a lot. So it can withstand 1 or 2 uses, but if you find that you're using one side a whole lot more than the other, you're going to want to season the side that's exposed to the burners on a regular basis. Otherwise, you're going to start getting rust. And in Florida, with all the humidity, it just makes it worse. So you just work it in, and then once you feel like you've got everything covered nice and evenly, the next step is going to be to put it in the oven. You want to preheat your oven to 350 degrees. And I go ahead and bake my cast iron for an hour. And what that does is it takes the oil and it polymerizes the oil and makes it stick to the cast iron. And that polymerized oil is the coating that helps make your cast iron non-stick. And it helps protect it from rust. There's a myth out there that that coating is sensitive, that it isn't very durable, but that isn't true. If you do this right and you use your cast iron a lot, that polymerized layer becomes pretty indestructible. But like I said, exposing it to the heat of a burner and to the open flame of a burner will destroy that polymerized surface after a while. So it's always good to re-season your cast iron, especially cast iron camping gear that you don't use all the time. Maintaining cast iron camping gear is a whole lot different than maintaining the cast iron that you use every day to cook with inside your home. So if you're doing one cast iron, it makes sense to do multiples if you have multiple cast iron pieces. I bake all of my cast iron at the same time. So this one is a cast iron griddle grill by Lodge, and it fits over my Coleman 2-burner propane camp stove. So it's a very nice cast iron griddle grill if you have a little Coleman stove. And I use this one a lot for making bacon and eggs. We can do pancakes, French toast, all kinds of good things. When you're seasoning, make sure that you get the little grease traps down in the front here, because those have a tendency to collect water and to rust. So you definitely want to make sure that you're getting those when you're coating with oil. And my dog Ellie there thinks that vegetable oil is very delicious. I don't know if you saw her in the video, but she tried to jump up here and lick the cast iron pan. So once I'm done with this side, I'll flip it over and do the griddle side, and then we'll put both cast iron griddle grills in the oven at the same time. And again, I do 350 degrees for an hour. Okay, so the next step is to put your cast iron on the racks. And once you have your oven preheated to 350 degrees, they'll be in there for an hour. So while we wait for the griddle grills to bake in the oven to season with the cast iron, I'm going to work on another cast iron pan that my mom found in storage. So it's all it's pretty rusty, it's old, but that is a great way to get started with cast iron, is to go to yard sales and things like that and find old cast iron pans rather than buying new. It just takes a little bit of work, but with a little bit of work you can restore those pans and season them, and then they make great camping pans. So with that, we'll get started. So this is the pan that I was talking about, and we've been working on this one for a while. It had a lot of surface rust, and basically what we did is we worked it with a steel wool pad, dry, but the next step is going to be to rinse it out with soap and water. Now, most people say don't wash your cast iron pans with soap and water. I don't agree with that. Where water is dangerous to cast iron is when water sits in cast iron. So if you wash your cast iron with soap and water, what you want to make sure that you do is dry it. You want to make sure that it's completely dry right away. Otherwise, rust spots do develop. But with a pan like this, we need to make sure that we get all the little rust deposits removed from the steel wool. And then what we're going to do is we're going to work the steel wool with wet soapy water to continue to work on it. And then we'll put our first layer of oil in it and bake it and see where we're at. We can always repeat those steps over and over again until we get the pan the way we want it. So I'm going to get to work on that, and we'll see what we get. So here's the pan after we've rinsed it with soap and water, and I did use the steel wool on it a little bit more. There are some surface rusts sections on this pan, but I don't think I'm going to get it any better than it is now. We've worked on it quite a bit with steel wool and brushes, and I just think that that's going to be as good as it's going to get. So we're going to coat it with oil, we're going to bake it for an hour, and then we're going to see what it looks like when it comes out. Again, we can always repeat these processes over and over again until we get it the way we want it. So I'm going to coat it with oil, and then we'll go ahead and put it in the oven. Okay, now that we've got the oil in, I lost my cameraman here, so I'm going to have to try and do it myself. So you'll see, well, I'm going to have to use both hands. So I will take a shot of what it looks like after it's coated. So here it is oiled, and we're going to go ahead and put it in the oven to bake with the griddle grills that are already in there. And I did both sides. I did a light coating on the outside too, just to address any of the metal to make sure that it doesn't rust. So with that, we'll put it in the oven and we'll see what it looks like in an hour. So while I'm waiting for the pans to season in the oven, I did want to mention some products provided by Lodge. They're these little plastic scrapers, and they work really good for cleaning cast iron skillets and grills and griddles after you've done cooking something on them. They've got the grooved version, which you see on the left, that works really good to get in between the grooves of the grills, and then the flat-edged ones that make excellent scrapers for the griddles and then inside skillets and that kind of thing. We keep these with our griddles, and we use them both at the campsite and at home when we come home to give our cast iron a good cleaning. Okay, so here they are after baking in an oven for an hour at 350 degrees. It looks like the oil has polymerized really nicely. So there's the Lodge griddle. And then here is the Camp Chef griddle. And I have the Camp Chef griddle sitting on a wooden cutting board, and then the Lodge griddle sitting on some old, pot holders. And then over here on the stove is the old skillet that we worked on. So it's got a good first layer. I think I will do this pan a few more times. What I do is I let it cool down, and then I'll recoat it with oil, and I'll do it again. And then basically how you build up that polymerized base is you let the skillet cool down, recoat it, bake it, let it cool down, recoat it, and bake it, and so on until you get a nice polymerized base. But that is a good first step. So In a future video, I'll keep you updated on how this skillet is turning out, and eventually it will be used for a camping adventure. So I'm looking forward to that. So hopefully you found these tips helpful in maintaining your cast iron. You know, there's a reason why they sell foil inserts for cast iron Dutch ovens, and that's because people are having a hard time keeping their cast iron seasoned and keeping things nonstick. And so, you know, don't be shy about pulling your cast iron out and saying, you know, I haven't seasoned it in a while. I'm just gonna throw some oil on it and bake it in the oven for an hour. That's a really good thing to do. Like I said, maintaining cast iron that you camp with so that you only use every once in a while is a whole lot different than using cast iron that you cook with on a daily basis, like on your stove and in your house and stored in the air conditioning. You know, that cast iron, it's much easier to keep that seasoned coating on than your campsite cast iron, unless you use it for both situations. But since I don't, I need to make sure that I properly check my seasoning from time to time on my cast iron. If you live in a hot, humid environment, I highly recommend storing your cast iron inside, as I said before, in the air conditioning, like in a closet or something like that. I store my griddle grills in their original cardboard box containers. That makes an excellent sleeve to just slide them in, and then I actually transport those to and from the campsite in that sleeve. So, like I said, if this has been helpful to you, please hit that subscribe button. Drop your tips and tricks. Hey, I did it. In the comments below for how you maintain your cast iron for fellow outsiders. And please, if you know a mom or a dad who wants to take their kids camping, fishing, hiking, wants them to learn about nature, whatever it is, and they don't know how to do it, please share Kemp Outside with them. We want to focus on helping them get their kids outside and battling that nature deficit disorder. So I'm Kevin Kemp. This has been Kemp Outside. We're your inside source for all things outside. We'll see you next time.